India and European Union trade conundrum is in news. Now, what do we understand by trade conundrum? It means the complexities, difficult issues with respect to the trade between India and European Union. Now, why is that the case? We already have World Trade Organization. So, what is the need for dealing with individual group or individual countries? That is because even though the WTO is present, now the WTO is basically a universal organization, consists of hundreds of countries, right? Now to come to an agreement in WTO is very difficult because all the countries needs to be taken into account and moving forward, right? You cannot leave the least developing countries, the developing countries, the developed countries. You need to take, sabka saath sabka vikas should work in WTO also. Now that becomes difficult when you have so many countries. So what countries generally do is, WTO is there, in addition to that they come up with bilateral treaty, trilateral treaty. Not just that, small groups also. Now the good point about this is, when you have bilateral, trilateral and small groups, it is easier to convince the countries and proceed according to the wishes of these countries. Correct? So it makes it easier. Now, having said that, India always faces a problem. India is a developing country. So the problem that India faces is, WTO wants to have free trade basically. Free trade as in there should not be any, let's say, taxation, any CVD, countervailing duty, etc., etc. But India, being a developing country, wants that. Why? Because the starting point is not equal. Let's take an example of USA. Now US has high efficiency, so can create products which are cheaper. For India it is difficult. So for India what happens is, the government provides subsidies. When the government provides subsidies to help the domestic industries in India, countries like USA don't like it. Right? Why they don't like it? So let's say they are producing, let's say, one pen which costs $1. Now India also manufactures one pen, it costs $1.5. So what India does is, India provides a subsidy of $0.6 so that India's pen now costs $0.9, which is cheaper than USA pen. So USA public would now want Indian goods, right? So that is how it works. But you cannot just like do that. Why? Because there are certain provisions which the USA can take against India. What are those provisions? The most important provision with respect to subsidy is CVD, that is countervailing duties. Now countervailing duties are the duties imposed to eliminate the impact of the subsidies provided by the exporting country. Right? That means you cannot just like that give any amount of CVD. You need to calculate CVD based on the subsidies. The amount of subsidies that is being given by the exporting country actually becomes the countervailing duty which would be imposed by the USA. Right? So now, what's in news now? There is an India-European Union trade conundrum. Why in news? Because this safeguard, this CVD is nothing but a safeguard. CVD is a safeguard. Now this CVD safeguard was expiring for European Union. So European Union extended this safeguard. It extended this safeguard up to June 2026. Right? Meaning they would impose CVD for 2 more years. It was about to end, but now they will impose for 2 more years. Now, because of it, what will happen? The Indian exports will become costly. So what can India do? Basically, India can file for a refund. Now, India may not necessarily get the refund. But however would file for a refund, saying that you imposing so much of duty is not the right thing because we are a developing country. But it is quite possible that India's take is not approved by European Union. So there is a standstill. When there is a standstill, then what can happen? India would still go on and provide subsidies under another scheme. right? So what is that scheme? Earlier it was merchandise export, MEIS. Earlier it was merchandise export. Now merchandise export from India. Merchandise export from India. Now this has been replaced. This has been replaced by RODTEP. RODTEP. What is this known as? This is known as remission scheme. What is this? This is a remission scheme. What does it do? When India cannot get a refund under any other scheme, India can apply this scheme and give refund to its domestic industries. When they do that, they would safeguard the domestic industries from the foreign goods. Now, there is an issue over here. Till how long can you safeguard your domestic industry? If you keep safeguarding your domestic industry perpetually, then what will happen? Your industry would never grow. But at the same time, if you do not help your industry, what will happen? Your industry may get extinct. So there needs to be a proper balance when it comes to schemes for exports. Right? There needs to be a proper balance with respect to schemes for exports. Now with respect to India and European Union trade, India has a trade surplus. India is equals to trade surplus. That means export from India is equal to around $86 billion, and the import is around $51 billion. Right? So India has a trade surplus. Now, the reason for that is basically substantial interest in steel industries. Right? Paper folders. Along with it, you have common aluminium alloy. So all these things India is sending, which is leading to India's trade surplus. Now because of this, European Union is coming up with countervailing duties. It is a duty imposed on the goods from an exporting country to reduce or to eliminate the let's say the effect of the subsidies provided by the exporting countries. Right? Now, having said that, this is now have been extended for another 2 years. So now India can look for a refund. That is a short-term approach. Long-term approach would be to develop Indian industries. Because if not done, what will happen is this trade surplus which is there, this will go away. Now India is exporting this much. When CVD is applied and European Union makes India's exports costlier, so this would of course come down, right? When this comes down, and there is a chance that this goes up, but this high chance of this coming down, because of which India may not have trade surplus, or the trade surplus which India has will be reduced. Right? Now it is a very important concept, especially for your mains examination. So whenever there is an issue of imposition of duties, identify the common areas and then identify the conflicting areas. There can be a mutual agreement in common areas, and when it comes to conflicting areas, you can have a discussion as to how to proceed, because both the countries have to give way. It is very important. The problem here is India has imposes let's say countervailing duties and all that. In fact, India imposes a lot of import tariffs up to 100% plus, right? And European Union, USA, they have lower tariffs. So now European Union and USA will say, let's make the tariff 0 and you also make the tariff 0. But the problem is If their starting point is 30%, they are reducing only 30%. If our starting point is 100%, we are reducing 100%. That is why India says we should not all make it to 0, we should reduce it by equal amount. Meaning from 30 if European Union and USA makes it 0, from 100 India would be able to make it 70%. So this is the discussion which goes on with respect to India and other countries or group of countries with respect to the trade balances. Thank you.